Mother Teresa, for our age, was truly an icon of what faith and service and Christian discipleship is. Well, Mother Teresa dies, and her postulator, who's preparing her canonization, began to publish her journals, and these journals absolutely shocked the world. Because what we learned from her journals is that this woman, who on the surface or at a deep level had this powerful faith and was kind of an icon of what faith means in our culture and our world, this woman, during the last 60 years of her life, not just the last 6 years, 60 years of her life, had absolutely no felt sense of God's presence at all. So in a certain sense, inside of herself, she felt like an atheist, and she struggled very powerfully with that. So in her diaries, there's all this literally groaning in terms of, God, where are you? Why can't you appear? Where is God? Why can't I feel God? And she did this through the last 60 years of her life. And of course, these journals were published, and there was an incredible reaction at all levels. So Time magazine did a huge story on this, and they asked questions like, was Mother Teresa an atheist? But a lot of journals and Catholic journals and Christian journals had articles in which people would ask, like, how could this happen? How could it be that Mother Teresa, this great woman of faith, had this terrible drought for 60 years in which God simply didn't seem to be present to her? Okay. I hope that by the time today ends, that you'll be able to answer that question fairly easily. And in fact, that you would reverse it in this way, that once we look at dark nights and the whole faith tradition on this and faith and doubt, that you would more easily ask the question, why wouldn't this happen to Mother Teresa? The real question is not, why would this happen to Mother Teresa? Why wouldn't it happen to Mother Teresa? Mother Teresa was a spiritual athlete, and she obviously prayed to God, give me the full shot. And she got the full shot. And you'll see, why wouldn't it happen to Mother Teresa? It happened to Jesus. And so why wouldn't it happen to Mother Teresa? But what happened to her? Well, she had what classically we call in spirituality and in mystical literature, she had a long, dark night of the soul. Basically, it means that the experience, the felt sense of God completely disappears in your life. And the way you used to feel about God, the way God used to be present in your life, that's all gone. It's an absence of God in our experience. Now, what does that mean? Okay, let's just pose the problem. And I want to pose it to you in this way. I want to give you two scenarios and then analyze them. Imagine this. Imagine in your life there's a certain moment where, for whatever reason, faith feels and God feels very, very real to you. Maybe you've just been to some prayer group, you've done a Cursillo retreat, you've done some kind of retreat, or you've done some type of prayer experience, and there's a season in your life, and a given day, God feels as real to you as this podium. There's no doubt in your mind about God's presence and God's reality. Then, some other night, you wake up in your bed, you stare holes into the darkness, and you try to imagine God's existence, and you simply can't. And you try every way to crank up God exists, and you can't. And you say, my God, I'm an atheist. You simply cannot imagine and make yourself imagine that God exists. Question. Does that mean that the night when you feel so secure, you have a strong faith? And the night when you feel so insecure, you have a weak faith? No. It means the night when you feel so secure, you have a strong imagination. And the night when you feel so insecure, you have a weak imagination. Notice, our imagination doesn't determine God's existence. Okay? Sometimes we can kind of imagine that God exists, and other times we can't imagine at all that God exists. That has nothing to do with God's existence. And as I want to say in a few minutes, God's existence is by definition non-imaginable in any case. So that in fact, the deeper we go in faith, the less we're able to imagine the existence of God, not the reverse. It's when we're young in the faith, when we're neophytes in the spiritual life, that it's easy to imagine God's existence. The deeper you go, the more it becomes at a certain point almost conceptually impossible to imagine God's existence. Because as we're going to see, God is by definition ineffable, non-imaginable.